All right, calling to order the. Yeah, thanks. Calling to order the Council of Economic Advisors meeting for Friday, September 12th, 2025. This meeting is being conducted virtually and being recorded. I assume by the native observer, if anyone else online. So we're going to just do a quick roll call because we are virtual. So I'm going to call your name. If you could just say present, that would be super. Bob Henschel. Doesn't seem to be muted. Oh, now he's muted. Well done. Okay, well, Bob Henschel, you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Super. Yes. Good morning. Matt Talkoff.
Morning.
Present.
Morning. Adam Meixner.
Morning. Present.
Morning. Okay. Adam.
Present.
I'm present. Heidi Farrell. Andrew.
Present.
David Allen, present.
Present.
Lisa Alcott, present.
Dina present.
Thank you.
Present. Present.
All right, nice. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm operating on no coffee, so lower your expectations. There were a bunch of things that we were gonna discuss today. In our last meeting, we talked a little bit about an economic development study. I want to just, we're supposed to launch right into our discussion of parking, but I just want to, because this was something that we had told you all that we were going to be discussing, I just want to give a few updates to make sure that everyone understands why we're not discussing economic development today. Which is that we actually have been doing a lot of work behind the scenes to get an economic development study ready for discussion, but actually from discussions that we've been having, both with other towns, we've taken a look at a lot of RFPs and a lot of finished economic development plans that other towns, similar towns, comparable towns have been doing. And they're quite a bit more expensive than our initial estimates would have suggested. Generally speaking, on the order of $75 to $85, which is more than one could sort of just come up with right away from the town. That's something that needs to be funded as part of our capital plan. What we're going to do is Dave Davison, who is the deputy town manager and director of finance for the town, is going to be joining our meeting next month, and he'll be kind of discussing with us the basics of town finance, which I think we, with so many new members, there's never a time that I don't learn something new from Dave, even having been doing this for a little bit. So I think that'll be a really good primer on town finances, but then he'll also kind of walk us through the procurement process for something like this economic development plan. I want to just set some expectations. I think I often am very optimistic and excited about doing these new things and hope and probably get the impression that they're a little easier to do and hard to do than they in reality are. So it seems like the time frame for this is going to be considerably longer than I would have originally hoped. We'll learn more when we talk to Dave about how financing for such a thing would work. I do think it's still something that we could consider doing, that we could work on an RFP for. We could talk about what the scope should be and put something like that together. I'm not saying that we don't do it. I'm just saying it's not like fast. So
Hey, when you were talking to the other towns, did they talk about just how long it takes to do one of those studies?
yeah, it's like 2 or 3 years.
Hmm.
Because there's at least a year before you can start, typically.
Sure.
And then there's the scoping and development process, and then there's the actual doing, assuming you have the financing to do it.
Yeah.
And then there's sort of the approval stages, and then you get it. Like, you're gonna implement. It's a long process, and I think one of the hard things to kind of humps to get over, at least it has been for me personally, is that everything just takes a really long time. This is in municipal government are really extended. That's not only because of open meeting law and we can only meet so many times and stuff like that, but there are like state mandated processes we have to go through. We have to use a procurement process. We have to use certain vendors. I mean, there's just a lot of hurdles. So it's not impossible, but it does take a long time.
Plus the time for the data collection.
Exactly,
Across
and
multiple parties.
community engagement. I mean, you know, like you have to do these steps and it just extends the process. So I know that there were some folks here who were interested in like kind of getting started anyway. It doesn't mean unofficially, we can't, you know, Dave, you had mentioned like, wait, I could whip something up from ChatGPT and you know, verify sources and so on. It doesn't mean we can't do that ourselves
Sure.
here
Yeah.
and build some resources and take some steps, you know, even if it doesn't turn into an economic development study, it could certainly, as you suggested, Jake, you know, help us to build out our website and to provide some guidance to folks who are visiting for recruitment or for marketing. So it's totally worth doing. And I would say if anyone wants to volunteer to lead an initiative like that, whether that's data gathering or updating or providing the content. We can't do the updating of a website ourselves, but providing content for such a thing, like I would be happy to hear about that.
We have, I think, have some materials that are relevant for that stuff. There was,
We, the planning board?
we, the CEA, like, I think we started to prepare like the doing business native guide.
It's a bit old. That's all.
Right, but we, so
So it just need updating.
we could like take a session.
Yeah.
You know, update it here.
In fact, we started to do that. When JP was here, we were looking
Yes,
at that
yeah,
document. And
He showed us different
it's
versions.
just a question, so. Not to be such a downer, but again, with the delays, like JP's gone, I don't have access to JP's work. Amy does, but she's also doing 2 jobs, so. So yes, we can totally do that, and we should plan to do that. In
Yeah.
fact, we can put it on the next agenda if people are interested in that.
I think a doing business in Needham agenda item would make sense for October. Or unless you think the guest speaker will be using up the whole time.
Well, we can always put it on the agenda and not get to it.
Okay,
And that way, if we have the time, we can
because this is something
have the conversation.
we discussed yesterday in a chamber staff meeting, is that we'd like to have this type of resource for business in each of our communities. So we're gonna be concurrently trying to put this up on different websites, and we're dealing with different communities. But I said, oh my gosh, this is exactly what we're talking about in the CEA and trying to make this happen. So I would even lead that project if you need
Awesome.
somebody.
I'm gonna put your name.
Can you even spell it? But it will fold nicely into what we're trying to achieve, to just make it easier for businesses to come into this area.
Yeah,
One of the things that I had been working on when I was brokerage is putting together a video of like 2 or 3 minutes, not more than that, of why it's amazing to site in Needham. I have some footage, and I do
Sure,
have
leads.
some,
Right,
and I do.
that'd be great.
It's like iPhone footage, and I'm not, my background in TV, I can come up with, you know, a layout, an outline of what that, you know, video would look like.
We did a video for the office, but we have some
talked
video
about
and,
that a
right,
while-
and
a
Hayden
while ago.
Spitz of Needham High grad has his own Boston drone, he does amazing work, so I think we could utilize him for Needham. I have to find resources in each of our communities, so it'd be
So,
great, let's see what you have.
Happy to chat about that.
Okay,
And then, yeah, so that could be, you know, also something for the, you know, for the website in addition to, you know, other content and links to other.
great.
One question about this is that if, you know, if one of us did want to grab some data on our own, what would be the procedure for that? Do we just do that and then share it with you and the staff and say,
So I
let's talk
think-
about it in a meeting, or do we create a subcommittee, or what actually is the best way to go do it?
We are not allowed to deliberate outside of a meeting, but doing a task doesn't constitute deliberation. So if you were going to do a little content creation, data retrieval on your own, you could come in and present it here. And if someone wanted to join you, I think that would be fine, like, shouldn't be the whole group, but I mean, if people are doing this task on their own, and then we could consolidate it in the meeting, we could present it to Amy, who would find the right place for that to live, and then it could just, I think, probably just be verified by town staff and then get presumably be put up. I haven't checked on the process internally for that, but I think that,
Oh, I'm not talking about for a website, I just don't like if there's data that we think should be considered by this
Yeah,
committee for making
please.
decisions.
make it happen.
Yep.
Yeah, awesome. I think, I guess generally speaking, my sense is that the town is going 120 miles an hour. It doesn't always appear that way from the outside, but everyone, the staff is working all the time on the goals that select board and other town boards have already set them to. So a lot of these nice to haves fall off the plate. And so the more that individuals on boards, committees and stuff and takes the responsibility for doing some of these things, the more progress we'll do. So I'm gonna put your name down for the dashboards, because I know you were really
Yeah, I'm gonna look into it and see what I
Okay.
can find.
awesome. So anyway, so just, that was something that I just wanted to update you all on. I would also say with, especially with regard to winding up, earlier in, various meetings in this group, I'm not sure who was here and, like, we talked with, Lee Newman, who was on a virtual meeting with all of us, and discussed a bunch of the projects that were going on, but we also talked about whether or not it would be appropriate for members of this committee to do some recruiting. You know, we talked about different businesses that we would like to see. I think you were interested in a bigger sort of, I'm gonna call it box store, but you know what I mean. I personally, and I know Adam would love to see a brew pub. There are lots of, you know, that you do it, electronics. The building is empty at this point. There are a lot of places where Needham could afford to see more businesses move in. And the folks on this board, frankly, are here because you are who you are in the community. And I think it's time that we activate some of our connections and see what we can do for recruitment. So that's just another sort of thought as regards the why Needham, and I think it's not just putting information on the page, but activating this group to talk in the community, get people to.
So on that point, I was curious about as we think about like how we want to communicate a lot of this information and part of the recruitment, we can think about sort of how we, so I'm looking at like the doing business of the town page right
Yeah.
now, and you know, there's like a couple PDFs. Very sort of randomly,
Yes.
one connection I have works for the town of Burlington, and they have this very great sort of portion of their website, which is like doing like,
Mhm.
and on this particular thing, so that I'm sort of looking through, they have available, a page for available office space. And where you can see the space, the square footage, and and they also have tax information on here. Taxes, incentives, workforce and location advantages. So I think as we're thinking about these sort of disparate projects.
Yeah.
Let's also think about like how, like, what does it look like if we were to do a website redesign, and how can we consolidate this? So for, especially from like a retail perspective, who in town, like realtors, commercial places, should we talk to?
Yeah.
To sort of get images and get
Mhm.
plan information, because I think
Um,
having all this available so that, yeah, we can continue to, we can recruit, but if someone's thinking about relocating their business, it makes it a lot easier for them to be like, oh, look, there's 4 buildings in the
Yeah.
Needham area, and
so I want, yeah,
Remember.
no, I just, I actually I really want to have this conversation and very fully, but I'm conscious that it is not on our agenda, which really means we're not supposed to be like getting into details here. I wanted to make sure to update you and let you know that it's not forgotten. I really want to have this conversation though, so I'm thinking what we need to do is put it on an agenda
so.
so that we can get right into it, because all of these are
Mhm.
amazing ideas that would really help. And I really would like to talk more about recruitment. I think it'd be great to talk to, you know, our 2 hospitals in town and find out what ancillary businesses they would like to see and how we could work with them potentially. I don't want to cut you off, though. I think you had something you wanted to say.
This kind of piggybacks on that. Do we, can you remind me, do we have a database of vacant spaces? And working with landlords, because I know like Cambridge and other communities do have that. And it's really an approach to try to be proactive about
Well,
recruitment
I
and
was
filling.
saying, no, but I don't.
Town-
Do you have
the town
any,
does.
like the assessment? I don't think that we do.
We tried to do that on our website and it was all opt-in for the people that had the available space and it got old really fast.
Yeah, it'd be hard to keep up with something like that.
Really hard. I'm looking at Adam.
Well,
And
they
Mike
do it,
Wilcox, you know, it was hard to keep.
a lot of communities do it to keep the vacancy as low as they can and to be proactive about landlords that are not proactive.
Yeah.
And saying like, you have a year to fill this, if not, you know, we can start to fine you kind of thing, and I'm not saying we do that, I'm just
Do we
saying,
have that kind of bylaw in there?
We don't.
yeah. And I-
Okay, so multiple layers, but yes.
But all I'm
we
saying
could
is
get
like,
into that.
you know, in terms of recruitment, kind of need to know, everyone needs to know,
Yeah,
what do we
what's
have?
available.
Yeah, what's available
Right,
and
well,
and
but
who's the landlord
as it
contact.
happens, we have a bunch of real estate guys
Yeah.
on our council who probably know that information, even if it's not in a formal way.
Right, like I could pull it on CoStar or something,
Yeah.
but I'm, you know, and I'm sure Adam could do the same, but I'm more thinking like, you know, the spaces that aren't listed on CoStar, which is probably a good chunk of some of the vacancy
Right.
here.
All right, so-
Anyways,
So I'm getting anxious about how much.
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
gonna- So I'm gonna
Yeah.
table this. But we are gonna put it on, we'll put it on our next, we'll have it on our, frankly, every agenda probably moving forward, because I think it's good to be able to have this discussion, but keep in mind that Dave will be here next time. He's fascinating. And it's likely to take up our whole time, but it really is a very good piece. Okay, so the thing that we're here, so that's why. That's an update on what we're not talking about today.
And that goes to the open meetings. You have to stay with the agenda
You have
so
to
that
stay with the
people know
agenda.
why they're coming.
And so that people who are interested in topics don't miss it.
Yeah.
Choose to join us. Okay, so that's what we're not talking about today. What we are talking about today is the Stantec parking study and recommendations. That was a study done in 2023. We have a bunch of recommendations. So one of the things that I just want to say at the outset is that some of these things are already underway. The town is already working with a vendor to provide like cashless parking, and also that once that program is established and we've been to test it, the differential parking rate that are recommended in the Stantec report would be possible. Like that, we'll gather information and then we'll sort of decide how we want to sort that out. So I don't know if are you able to project?
Was that the sheet that you were talking about?
That's fine.
Plus-
We can get there, yeah. But at the same time, the planning board has just sponsored a parking study, and I was hoping that you might be able to walk us through a little bit what your objectives are there and how that study will overlap with the 2023 study, so that we understand kind of, first of all, what the objective is, but also what we're gonna come out of.
So, good question, and the best information I have is we were able to secure Stantec, which is great because they've done a lot of the underlying work in two core commercial districts, one in the center of town and, you know, from the report, and also in Needham Heights. The purpose of the purpose of this study is to be broader across the whole of the town, because there are other areas where parking, where parking has been an issue. And it's to look at all of the same issues that were discussed here,
Just more broadly.
just, more broadly. And also, trying to factor in, there's this really odd challenge that we have, where we have very limited parking in some areas, just by the capacity. And you know, if a restaurant moves in somewhere and they move into the center of town. You know, there's only so much parking that's physically available, and there are parking standards that our bylaws require. And the planning board, even for multifamily housing too, for different uses. Um, but the, but the planning board ends up waiving, so if you're required to have 84 parking spaces. And there's only 40 available, we may waive parking requirement for 44. And so, so we need to figure out the parking from both a demand side and a supply side in relation to the specific use. So that's more broadly what, you know, the report will study, what Senate will study, in addition to the underlying elements that are already part, and they'll also make recommendations as well, which I think a lot will be, you know, will be similar.
Adam, is that, and so I know you said you'd go broad on that, but it looks like one of the recommendations in this parking report
Yeah.
was the introduce flexibility in zoning, and is this kind of like just zooming in on that, but for the entire town, or?
So yes, and it's, that's one of the elements, but it's not the sole focus of the broader. Study, it's an element of it. You know, there's different parking standards and requirements in Highland. Highland Commercial 128 in the New England Business Center in the downtown. So so we do want to look, so we will look at it from a zoning point of view to see if there's reform needed. And what the mechanism for reform would be for the parking standard, because it should be, first of all, it's gotta work. It's gotta work for, you know, for the town, for you and I to be able to walk through safely, cycle safely, and drive through the town safely and find a parking spot. It has to work for businesses, and it has to work for customers, and it has to work for infrastructure requirements. And so we'll ask Stantec to, you know, to study the different uses. There's the Institute of Traffic Engineers produces a report of typical parking standards. And we, you know, and that sometimes informs some of our the zoning for the types of uses, but we're also constrained because there's only so much there's only so much physical capacity unless we're able to build, for instance, you know, which I would love to see in some kind of a private-public partnership, like the Walgreens lot.
Yeah,
Am I going too far?
yes,
Okay.
you are, but also, also I had that on my list.
Yeah, right.
Just as a side note. It was brought up in this meeting. All the times probably, the Walgreens lot, what happens to that, are they gonna sell? And I just want to report back on that I did talk with the town about this, and the town has been reaching out unsuccessfully. Because it's a Walgreens, you have to reach out to Walgreens corporate, there's no like local component here, blah, blah, blah. Strikes me as one of those things that one of our real estate people who knows how to talk to other real estate people, it could pursue as an individual project, but that's that side. But yeah, I think that understanding, you know, how those two parking studies will work together. I'll also just remind everyone that the MBTA Communities Act was approved by the state. And that everywhere that applies, which is not our town centers, it does not apply to Avery Square, it does not apply to Union Center, but everywhere that it does apply, the parking minimums were reduced to 1. So there's that as well. But I think, you know, the parking minimums or parking standards that are set by the town are an issue. I think it was in our local paper a couple weeks ago that it was reported that the medical office building that is planned for Highland Avenue noted some parking issues that were hurdle for construction, although I do note that they did not actually file a waiver for those parking restrictions.
Right, we did
They-
study their site circulation, because they have a double decker parking structure
Yeah,
in the back of the building. Remember,
or at least said that they didn't. So, but anyway, so it's clearly something that affects the circulation throughout the entire town. And, you know, we have a lot of, but I guess one of the things that makes me anxious about this whole undertaking is just that there's so much change. I'm not sure that there's ever gonna be a time when there isn't a lot of change. So I don't see that as a reason not to persevere. But there does seem, you know, there are a lot of projects kind of bubbling up. 100 West goes to the planning board this week. That's gonna create a lot of fuffle in Avery Square and frankly everywhere else. You know, there's all kinds of stuff going on. So anyway, I guess with all that on the table, I just thought I'd open up conversation about the study, the recommendations. We know that the council has previously made a recommendation to the select board to follow up on these things, some of which are underway, but many of which aren't. And I'd like to know from you guys, what do you want to do? How do we go make happen?
Do we have, what is this matrix we're looking at? This
This
is,
is the recommendations from the Stantec study. and
Okay.
The recommendations are marked out as short-term, midterm, and long-term, and so the council in a previous iteration had recommended a number of these as like priority pieces. Have that letter here handy. I just call those out.
Is that this, I don't know if that's updated, is that the same as this one that was in the report?
Yes.
Okay.
So in this letter sent in 2023, the Council of Economic Advisors identified the following recommendations as the highest priority for the town. Number 2, long-term parking and permit spaces to reconsider who can access permits and permit holder spaces and where non-permit holders can park for longer periods of time. To create, and number 6 is to create more active curbs. Well, they don't seem to be in the same.
This is a different page in the study. There's
What
another
slide
one.
are you on?
The slide with the recommendations is,
Oh,
it's what you.
or in the PDF that you
It's sort of
sent
more-
out, it might be a different
a bit
format.
prettier.
It's
Um,
page 56 in their PDF, or at least the doc that we all have.
okay. Well, the recommendations are the same. I won't say. the
Yeah, just
number.
different numbers, yeah.
Just let it go.
that one, it's easier to.
But creating more active curbs, so that's like for Uber Eats pickup or, you know, a 15-minute slot at the library or whatever, because you're just going in to return your books and then you're getting back to your car. So you wouldn't necessarily be paying for those, you just like stop in and leave, but it prevents clogging up longer spaces than other folks who want to shop could use. Improving parking and wayfinding signage, and I think that some of that was done, but still found to be deficient.
Exactly.
Not big enough, not obvious enough, right? And probably just not enough, like there needs to be more signage. Updating the payment technologies, this is underway, and there have been hiccups in that process, but it is nonetheless underway. Another was introducing flexibility in zoning, which the planning board is working on. And then clarity of regulations, because a lot of the signs are hard to understand, or they're different places, or they're different on weekends. But it's complicated. Not really. Nobody's really sure what they're doing. So there are these recommendations that I still think are really good ones, but I think that there are places, at least that I see, where we can make some contributions, but I want to hear what else. What do you think?
Can we start with the payment technologies? Like, what was interesting about the report is that I didn't realize enforcement kind of stopped early. And also, like, I think most of us know the meters like stop at 6 too. Is like, is part of the payment technologies when that's implemented to improve the signage and clarity and extend the hours and do all that? Is that part of the payment technology piece?
So I haven't been directly involved in this project. Amy has.
Yeah.
So I'm sad that she's not here to help us today, but I think the first part will be enabling mobile payment.
Yes.
Because people never have, you know, for their car anymore. So that'll be the first step.
Found something smart.
You have a little Tupperware in mine. And then, once that is sorted and works, and everyone's happy with it, then we can start adjusting hours and.
Regulations.
Yeah.
Because it's,
Well, but even on signage now, we need, I mean, even if it remains assigned area, if it's permit parking, sometimes that's not clear. It's
Right.
2 hours until what time and then
Exactly.
after, yeah,
that's
yeah.
right, that's the whole.
So, but making it possible to change the hours or to do the distributive pricing so that during rush periods, the pricing is different, or closer to town, the pricing is more than further out. Right, you park one place and do your errands walking and then go back to your car rather than, you know, people do move their cars around. Want only accept a parking space right in front of the store that they go to. So I think that's a work in progress. But it is the intention to not.
And we can recommend
expect
how
it
to
do
do
it.
that, but ultimately, the select board makes those changes if they're gonna change, or is it the different department in the town that would change distributive pricing?
I think it's the select board. I mean, it would come through. I mean, it would have come through economic development. That's where this
Right.
project started.
Okay.
So that's another element of this that has to be.
Do you mind if I address the report more broadly and?
Go ahead.
So just a few things, because I did take a deep dive on this. So one is, I know that there is some like criticism online about this study, and I think it's actually a really good study. I know that this was done on one day, November 17th, 2022, because it's a Thursday. A similar study was done in Brookline. I think they did 2 weekdays and a weekend, so it would be great if we added a weekend to this. But on the other hand, like, I think the recommendations hold regardless, because it's about creating more capacity and creating more transparency about where there is capacity. As someone who's lived in Needham for 3 years, I actually realized that there's far more parking than I thought there was
Yes,
around
exactly.
town. And that's really the main issue, that people don't understand where it is and how you get there. So I do think that there were 2 recommendations I know that we're already following up on that were really interesting. So one was the wayfinding waypoint, and I think we should think about this in, with traffic, like based on where you come into town, we're directing people, probably we want to direct them towards right turns to get to the parking lots, whether it's, if you're coming from the north into Needham Center, we're probably directing them into that train station parking lot versus if they're coming up Chestnut, we drive them to Chestnut. I think there's some issues if you're coming east from Dedham. I think the other thing that was really interesting is discussing kind of like multimodal and getting around. So if you look at the map, it talks about this in the study, but there are a lot of parking lots where there are actually fences and you can't get through. So for example, if I actually didn't know about the Dedham Ave parking lot, but there's a big fence there that, to another parking lot that's behind, I think, but like the golf shop and ice cream and all that other stuff, and you'd actually have to walk around kind of a pretty far way to get back into town. So I think, whether we could do both the wayfinding and then maybe even talk to some of those property owners of even saying, hey, can we have, just like, can you open some of your fence and like you have a walkway along the side of your building, just create clear paths for people to be able to get through. And then I actually felt like the wayfinding recommendations may be a little bit inadequate, because I think maybe we also need to say, here's how far you are from Needham Center, like from this parking lot, because we have, older residents who might not be able to walk as far, and they might say, hey, like, I, want to know, is this a 1 minute, 2 minute walk? Is this, or what's the distance? So I think we could be a little bit more friendly in that way as well. So, yeah.
Well, let's let him finish his
Okay.
thought and then.
Oh, no, I mean, sorry, I just went in, dove in on a few of them, but those are kind of my main thoughts. And I think, like, of course, the performance-based pricing is incredibly important, because one of the surveys that was done in this report says that there are actually a lot of employees who are parking on street.
Yeah.
And so if the pricing is done in such a way which says, hey, if you're really, if you're right out front of the business, it's gonna cost a lot more, but we say, hey, permit parking back here is cheaper. And then the last thing I was thinking about too was I was actually driving in from Great Plain from Wellesley yesterday, and I wanted to make a quick stop in town. I didn't want to drive to the middle. I went to the parking lot by the bank. That's permit parking only from like 8 to 2 p.m. So many spots were open, and I like the recommendation in here that said, hey, some of those spots, if you want to pay for them, you can go park there. That would have made my trip way easier. I actually skipped the middle of town and went somewhere else.
Yeah.
So a lot of great recommendations in here, and I think that just the wayfinding and just like ease of walking would be super helpful.
I was pretty fascinated by the comment you had about being able to know the distance for someone, like if you're gonna go to a hair salon, but you've gotta park around the corner. Is that like a 2-minute walk? Is that a 5-minute walk? Is it a 30-second walk? How would that work? Is that something that you would see like on a sign, like somewhere on Great Plain? You know, it's 2-minute walk to town hall, so to give a bearing, but it would be printed sign. Is it an electronic thing?
Or
How would
maybe you could
that-
just have a "You are here" sign, like,
Yeah,
like
Right.
with orientation to the town common, maybe,
Yeah.
because like, I mean, you don't know where you're going, you don't know where that person's going, so
It's
it's hard to
interesting.
give them an
Yeah.
estimate, but you could say like, here's a town common and you are here.
Right.
And the signage should depend on like, for example, we talked about the Placer AI data last week about understanding where people are coming from, you know, where they're in town. It really depends on what that data shows, because if we find that most of the people are coming from in town, they probably don't need as much wayfinding.
Yeah.
But if the goal is to bring a lot of people from out of
Well,
town, then we
I
might.
get that, I mean, you just said you've lived here for 3 years and there's
Yes.
parking spaces you don't know about, so
Exactly.
clearly we do, like for residents, I mean,
And I had no
especially
idea,
if we're reorienting.
and I had no idea how to walk out of the Chestnut lot when I parked there the first time, because I was very confused about the layout of Needham when I first moved here too.
And I just wanna follow up on the point that you brought up about consolidation of lots or making pass-throughs easier. I mean, that was something that I have on my list, which is not what I'm looking at. But I think, again, that this group with its real estate connections and so on, like, would be really, so making a recommendation like this to the select board means that potentially we're asking town staff to reach out to property holders. It seems to me that there's no reason that we can't do that, to start that. Are you even interested? Could we have a conversation? Because then we can turn it over to the town to have those conversations. I think that's a line we don't necessarily cross. But initiating it seems to me to be a really great place for this group to have an impact, whether that's, you know, recruiting a business to town or recruiting a developer to a site or recruiting parking. Because I think, you know, one of the things that struck me about the permit parking was the report talks about it being prohibitively expensive. Like, if this is a benefit to the town, theoretically, like, why do those permits have to cost? Or why do they have to cost too much? Or why should an individual have to purchase it as opposed to a store who could share it among part-time employees? I think that there are, I mean, I don't have a particular scheme in mind, but I think that there are lots of ways to make this more flexible so that parking in permit parking, especially for employees, is more attractive. Like if they're coming from somewhere else, knowing that you have a spot waiting for you, it makes getting to work a lot easier. Takes that like treasure hunt away from the end.
So for instance, Dedham Avenue parking, I purchased quite a bit parking spaces, permits, and then I have some private parking also. And it's fine, whatever we pay, it's okay. But the problem is there's a lot of violation there. People who park cars there for days or weeks and there's no parking enforcement. We are paying for that parking.
Do you call the
We
town?
don't unfortunately, but
Okay,
you know, there should be parking agent who would enforce that parking,
sure,
you know, regulations.
sure.
They're not.
Sure, okay, so that's an issue that we would certainly follow up on,
Exactly.
you know, in the scheme of doing all this, although I think you should call.
I do too. I would be enraged.
Yeah, like, I mean, if you're paying for that parking.
Right.
That's
You
the
can have
park.
assigned spaces or you're allowed to park the
So
permit. I'm not
there
sure
are
how the
assigned
permit works.
spaces,
Mhm.
and then
Ah.
I have some private parking
Okay.
available also. But then people just come and park and they just
Yeah.
leave it there for weeks.
Yeah. That's really frustrating and not and detracts from the making this whole thing work.
Exactly.
But if our objective is to improve the flow and to make it easier for
Mhm.
people to patronize businesses and make their way through town and everything, then I think that this could be really impactful. So I would, you know, just say that like we should, as a group, kind of maybe take individual action. I would, you know, decide as a group to see what we can activate within this group. Other things.
Could I just go back to the signage, on the point of like how you would tell distances? I don't think it's, first, I think having actual like parking this way signs. I think we have a few of them, but that's also helpful, especially if you're coming out. But I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily to, like, we can have a "you are here" sign, but like calling out specific landmarks might also be helpful. So like you said, you know, how far are you from town hall? So something I think about is when you park behind like Bagels Fest and there's that alleyway that goes through, like
Mhm.
right there, like you could be like, you know, town hall, like this way,
Yeah.
point two, whatever. Just for like relative like marking of like, so if you don't know where you are, you go out an entrance that you're not familiar with, you're like, okay, great, I can orient myself this way.
Yeah.
And so we can sort of, I think, do that in many ways, like we can even have it as part of a larger sign, but that in itself, I think is helpful to know, like, oh, okay, this street is that way, or Highland is that way. Just a thought, but I think that would also, maybe for me at least, would encourage more like walking, so you can park somewhere and be like, okay, I know I can go this way
Sure.
to get this place that way, so. I think it might be helpful to explore what other towns do, or like what landmarks we may want to point to
Yeah.
in a way, so that to like help encourage people to like take a little walk around, you know?
And I think to that point, one of the things that this group could choose to do, aside from obviously recommending to the select board and getting select board approval, I mean, there's a committee that deals with sign.
Yeah.
So we could put together a recommendation, right, with
Mhm.
like specifics, and we could bring it to the mobility, may help me,
Mobility Coordination Committee.
thank you.
Right up.
And propose that these are changes that are made, you know, to set this in action. I think what we, and I definitely include myself in this, we often like say, okay, well, we should do this, but then when we leave it there. And so I'm suggesting that this committee take it.
Somebody needs to lead
For-
parking.
Yeah, so we need someone to, I know you had a comment, so.
Oh, yeah, I'll raise my hand to leave parking. Right?
But I mean, I think that even breaking this down into little components, you know, if we can find people who feel like they can lead even the discussion about it, that would be great. I think we need more stepper uppers. So, what was your comment?
I just wanted to add on to one thing Andrew said, is that I heard on a different committee, they were saying, hey, it'd be great ways to delineate like when you're in Needham Center versus other parts of town. And so if you added to that signage, like entering Needham Center or leaving Needham Center, then someone might say, okay, like when they see entering Needham Center, maybe that's when they start looking for parking because they might not realize that they're there. And then when they see leaving Needham Center, they're like, okay, well now I have to go find something or I have to loop back. But just thinking about if we're gonna talk to this sign committee and make some recommendations, maybe some of these things from those other committees and this can go work hand in hand.
Okay.
If I want to add to his thing, so in Dedham Avenue parking lot, for instance, there used to be garden center where the fence was.
Yeah.
And now there's private owner and they fenced it off. So in prior, we used to walk through that, it was allowed to park. Now they just don't want you to walk through that. So if somehow they can give a right of way to go to
walk through, you mean?
walk through to Great Plain Avenue.
I think
so
that would be a
lot of people
great
can park
conversation
on
to
this,
have.
And, you know, it's just simply opening up a little bit of a fence so people can walk, and now there's an access from Dedham
Sure.
Avenue parking lot to Great Plain, you know, businesses, stuff like that.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously.
Oh, you're talking about
hundreds of-
Hillcrest, the chain, are you talking
No,
about the
Dedham Avenue.
Terenzi development, like to cut through? It's gotta be liability. You know, I'm just even thinking about the parking lot behind where you were talking about, you're gonna walk across an active parking lot, and if that owner, I think that's gonna be
Possibly.
hard to
Possibly,
get an
but I
okay
think
for
we
right
could,
away.
I think we could have the conversation
Yeah.
and find out, you know.
Why they put the fence
What the
up.
liability risk is, and if there's a
Yeah.
way to mitigate it,
Yeah,
because certainly it's easier for the property owner to
yeah,
cut off.
that's what I was saying.
But potentially, you know, there's a route around where you, or maybe the town could paint a pedestrian walk.
Mhm, mhm.
I don't know. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there, but.
So I think in terms of somebody taking on parking, I've lived here so long, I would not be the right person because I know where all the different parts of towns are, but I would think either getting people from out of town to guide you through what's very perplexing, or even a new person that really didn't know their way around. I think that's who needs the signage. Like I'm parked, I went
You're
down the
marked.
alleyway to town hall today, and got free parking
Yeah.
by the train, like I know where to park, but, I went through it, but,
Yeah.
so I would just be like, how do you not know that's where that is?
You had something to say. What was that?
No, just, it's so hard for me to wrap my head around all this because I never, ever have a problem finding a parking space. I just feel like there's tons of parking, whether I'm in Needham Center, and yes, I've lived here for 25 years. I didn't know where everything was. In fact, my education came very quickly 4 or 5 months ago when I got 2 parking tickets in a row. Because apparently the first one didn't teach me, and I paid those and decided I was tired of it, and then I thought, well, I may as well go park on that big parking lot, it's free, and that's where I park now, all the time when I come down here, and I'm thinking, what the? Just listening to all this, and yes, definitely the signage and all that is so important, but I'm just thinking to myself that, I guess I'm trying to understand, we're not trying to add any parking, we're just trying to make what we have more accessible and more,
As part of this
Um,
committee, yeah.
right, and more, where is what and when's it available, and just making it very clear. Okay, because somebody said something about enforcement, and I thought, no, I was enforced twice.
So, but it is true, enforcement has been an issue for business owners
Yeah.
at different parts of the town.
Okay.
Where other people are utilizing the parking. Which is taking away from customers. Or it's taking away from business employees. And, who pay money for these permits. So it's complicated thing, because there's so many elements that inform the whole. And, enforcement, is one side, wayfinding signage, is another. Clarity of regulations, is important, but there are, capacity in terms of making the existing, spaces more efficient. Is a huge benefit that, that would make things a lot clearer, more simple, and would unlock a lot of parking accessibility. And then there are times and places where we will want to have increased capacity. Because like Heidi was alluding to, there will be, oncoming developments that will create additional demand for parking. And as these developments are happening, we want to make sure that there is sufficient parking. Because you can't just keep waving and waving and waving thoughtlessly. It has to be part of some kind of, plan and intent.
So just to clarify, if I can, capacity is actual number of spaces available.
Yeah.
Efficiency is having it, that makes me think of one of the things I read in the study was places, whether it's the Heights or Needham Center, are
Yeah.
never more than 60 to 70% use.
Yes, exactly.
That's,
Exactly.
okay, so that's the efficiency
But people
piece.
still, so when you talk about you've never had a time when you can't find a space. I mean, I feel the same way,
Mm,
which likely is due to the hours that we're here,
Sure.
not where maybe we're not at maximum peak time. But it also has to do with like knowing we live here and knowing where to find parking. So I know that if I can't get a space in the Trader Joe's lot, I know where the other parking is and I just go and use it. But if you don't know where that parking is, then, and the Trader Joe's lot is full, then you get frustrated. Cause, and
That's a
that's
big-
what makes you feel like there's never
Right,
any
exactly
parking.
right.
I mean,
That's a
it's-
big
so
complaint,
it's
is the Trader
it's a
Joe's, right?
perception,
Yeah.
not a reality,
Right.
but like, if you don't know where to go, then that's your reality. So I'm not saying that,
And there are people, if they don't get that spot out front, I've told people, they will just keep driving. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, I'll do that
Yeah.
task
I'll
a
do that
different
another
day, I'll
day.
go somewhere else.
elsewhere, yeah.
So it is very important to some people that they want to park right in front.
So let me address our folks online,
Yeah.
who are folks who maybe, will you, who are folks that I keep referencing as having, connections and so
I know
on.
Bob has a lot of.
I wanna
space
know
in
what
back
you
there.
think of this conversation and if you have any thoughts to share.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion on it is that there probably is in total adequate parking in Needham. But I think you have to be cognizant of the fact that all parking isn't created equal. You know, it's got to be convenient, particularly if you're shopping and you're carrying bags. I mean, it's not just a human nature laziness issue, which I think plays into it. You know, like Lisa, I think you said most people, if they can't park right in front, they're not going to park there at all. But you know, there's a practical element to it, where you know it's got to be convenient to the store. So I think you know we don't want to lose sight of that. And you know, regarding cutting across private property, that's easier said than done. I wouldn't spend a lot of time going down that alley, just because I don't think it's gonna bear a lot of fruit.
Because of liability?
Liability, yeah, I mean, all it takes is one slip and fall because, you know, the private landlord didn't, you know, remove ice and snow to someone, you know, to basically a trespasser's satisfaction, and then, you know, you get yourself a problem that you really didn't need to invite.
Okay. Bob, do you
That's
have
just
any
one
thought-
simple example of, you know, what could happen.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Do you have any thoughts, you or Adam, about the idea of reaching out to some of these private landholders or on the subject of permit parking?
I know this is Adam. Oh,
Yeah, Adam, thanks.
yeah, I mean, I know going back to the Walgreens lot, like parking in Newton Center is also challenging. And for many years, Walgreens would not allow, they had that giant lot on the left-hand side, and then like it went around the back of the building. From what I understand, like Walgreens corporate would never allow people to like rent out spaces there. I did hear that like the manager of that store was doing a side deal and not telling corporate and renting out spaces to, you know, other like businesses in the area, like the office building next door. But I think it was like I mean, granted, I heard that like 7, 8 years ago. So who knows if their, you know, thoughts on that have changed, but, it may be an uphill battle, or they may, you know, change it now. I can try to ask around some retail brokers who, you know, A, who the broker is that represents Walgreens, and then B, if they could talk with ownership or, you know, Walgreens corporate about doing something there.
Yeah, I mean, so Adam, if you could do that, that'd be awesome. I think I would also just say that,
I can do that.
you can do that?
Yeah,
Okay,
I can get us a
David-
Walgreens contact. They're not expanding, so there's no
Well,
broker. that-
Actually, no, what I'm wondering is if they're
Well, that's
leaving,
what I'm gonna, yeah, I can get a corporate contact and get more information for that.
that would be awesome.
That I
I'm
can
putting
go.
your name
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
How
please
did the
do.
hospital get that arrangement for those spots? Somebody must have agreed. So that's the Walgreens parking lot and they have reserved spots.
I don't, so remember, there's another medical
I
building.
don't think that whole parking lot.
There's a medical building
Oh,
next door, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
where
that's
Brigham
why.
and Women's is, I think.
So, exactly.
And
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
that parking lot, and somebody made an arrangement that they have those reserved spots in
Yeah,
that
well,
parking lot.
so I think my point is that the town has reached out and has gotten nowhere. And I think there's certainly a, you know, a lend lease situation, but there's also a concern that's been expressed here and elsewhere that Walgreens won't be there
Yeah,
forever.
mhm,
And what happens then?
yeah.
And so having, you know, maybe that they grant us right of first refusal, but like having our name in the pot anyway, to,
Anything to find out.
you know, would
No, I
be
can
a
get-
really interesting, thank you,
Yeah,
Dave.
we've
I-
done
that-
deals with CVS, not Walgreens. They've been like contracting in the market, so.
Well, exactly,
So it's finding just the right corporate contact, but yeah. I'll get that.
awesome. Matt is now looking at us. Do you have something to contribute? Hi.
Oh, hi. No, only that I know back probably now it's over 20 years ago, but when we first started this committee, we did reach out to Walgreens corporate. It's everything you guys said. It was Walgreens corporate. Somebody in the town, Kate may remember, did call, did reach out to them, and again, they had no interest in really engaging. But to the point now, economics and the world's different, and so I think it's a great idea to go back and call them again. Same thing happened with, at the same time, we were calling Coca-Cola, just again, to try and get them to do their upgrades as well, and maybe we'll say that that thing that started 20+ years ago resulted in the nice look that it has now. I don't know who maybe one of you guys called them, but somehow they, yeah, Adam maybe. I mean, finally they've done that, which is really nice.
Yeah, they came to the planning board to do some work and, you know, cleanup was part of it.
Yeah. So maybe sometimes it takes decades, but you know, you got to start somewhere. So I think it's a great idea to call Walgreens again.
Awesome. And I'm gonna put my name down to talk with the town and understand what the process is even for issuing permits. Okay. Because that's
Yeah.
something that I think we would need more clarity on.
And are there different costs?
But yeah, I mean, I don't know any of those answers, so. I
What
will-
lots does that happen
I
in?
don't know, so I'll
Yeah.
try to
Larry.
find the right person and maybe, depending on how complicated that structure is, bring that person to a meeting and
Yeah.
have.
Can't find it online, I'll tell you that.
I'm sure you can.
And if you want to assign people to, I mean, I'm more than happy. If you want to assign me some landlord or business to call, I'm happy to do that. So just don't feel like you need to do all of it on your own.
Awesome, I'm gonna take you up on that, Matt.
Sure.
And just keep in mind that the MBTA lots are sprinkled throughout the town, and the town has no jurisdiction over those. Is that correct?
Yeah, we do sometimes negotiate with the MBTA and it takes ages and ages. I would not look at that as a even remotely
So
medium term.
Someone must have a map.
Yeah,
of
yeah.
All the spots. Is
I
that-
mean, after 3 years of negotiation, we just relabeled some spots at the CAF. It was a huge project. And
In the past, they've occasionally we've engaged in like land swap discussions with them, like when the
Yeah.
Harvey Graymont area with their junction sites and stuff. But it's like you said, it takes a long time. It's worth always having the conversation, but it takes a long time.
so Matt, I'll ask you to think about sites that are likely suspects, like
Sure.
when you look at your relationships in town and real estate in town, think about, you know, 1 or 2 places that would be ideal for some other use.
Sure.
And let us know, you know, maybe in the next meeting, what you've kind of come up with, and
Sure.
awesome. It's just about time. In fact, it's 1 minute from time. And I don't want to keep anyone here and I have another meeting to go to. So, I think though that this has been really interesting. In our next meeting, we'll make sure that updates are part of our discussion so that we can have more full discussion about this. We'll have Dave Davison here to give us an update on town finance. We're gonna include doing business in Needham and all of that encompasses on every agenda so that we can discuss more fully at our pleasure. Anything that needs to be, any last comments before we adjourn?
You can add my name to like the signage.
Excellent, Andrew.
You can provide a bit of an update of next week.
Oh, that's right, because 100 West is coming. Okay.
So that and that. So at the planning board.
Super quick though. 'cause-
Yeah, time. Planning board, we have, like Patty said, 100 West, which is coming in with an application for a site plan review. It'll probably take a couple of hearings to go through, which is pretty common. And then we'll see, you know, what they have to say and, you know, what comes out of the hearing, but that'll be an interesting application. And great to see, you know, from all of the hard work that, you know, that you and a lot of other people put together and you know, reforming the zoning to see that come to fruition. And then also, the planning board is starting to look at zoning reform in the center of town and also in the mixed use 128 Highland Avenue commercial area, like basically Staples and kind of behind towards the river. And we're starting to hold meetings with with brokers and with landlords and with tenants, so. Dave is gonna participate, which is great. Adam Convisor, another retail broker is gonna participate. Bob Henschel's gonna participate, which is helpful. And then some other landlords and tenants we're trying to get. It'll happen over the series of multiple meetings, and stay tuned. Because it's in very early stages, we're just starting to look at the existing zoning, the uses of dimensional regulations, and see what may transpire, if anything, over a period of time.
And with that parking stuff, I just didn't know a specific issue to pick, so
Okay.
whatever.
I appreciate that, and I really appreciate everyone's.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Second, we have to do a roll call. Swap,
Raza?
Yes.
yes? Yes.
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 Yeah, and I'm saying none of your names, so it's telling you as a roll. Heidi says, yes, let's adjourn. Adam? Okay, Bob,
Yes.
Matt
Yes.
and Adam.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone. Good to
Bye-bye.
see you all.